So, hello and welcome to episode 2 of The Long Road Back, a podcast where we try to show the parts of injury that people don't normally talk about, to give athletes a voice, and ultimately to show people who are going through injury themselves they are less alone. So, today I'm delighted to announce that I'm joined by someone who represented England rugby at both under 18s and under 20s level, played for both Bath University and Bristol Bears, went on to represent England in the Commonwealth Games, Rugby Sevens World Cup, and the World Sevens Series, became an Olympian in 2024. Representing Great Britain as the youngest member of the squad before joining Harlequins in the PWR. So, Grace Crompton, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've seen a lot of what you've been doing online, and I think it's really inspirational, and I think more people need to hear about it. So yeah, I couldn't wait to talk to you.
It's amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. And I think just before we get going, I think we mentioned there, it's amazing how I think the first thing that's struck me with all of this is it just needs to be talked about more. I think it's amazing that, and even just before we started recording, we were both kind of talking about there's so much you wish you could tell people when you're injured. I think it's a really hard thing to put language to. So that's definitely something we'll come on to later. So I think just before we get going, I'd love to hear kind of from you your thoughts on your journey, because it's quite an amazing kind of trajectory you've been on. And after only starting rugby at age 17, it's quite remarkable.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. So I started rugby quite late compared to some of my peers. I found it at school for an amazing teacher. And I was very much kind of an athlete in terms of did athletics. I did sprinting and triple jump. That was kind of my main thing growing up. And then he kind of just gave me a rugby ball and he was like, you can just run like you have been, but you've got a rugby ball in your hand. And I absolutely loved it. And then it honestly became a whirlwind. I was playing England under 18s like 3 months after I picked up a rugby ball. So imposter syndrome was real at that point in my life. But I think the best way to learn is by being kind of chucked into the deep end. And that's very much what happened to me. And it kind of just went on from there in a lovely kind of trajectory. I met some amazing people along the way. And for the most part, I've been very lucky with my journey. You know, if we're talking about injury side of things, I really value my recovery. I always warm up. I know what works for me as an athlete. And I think that has kind of set me in good stead for making sure that I'm taking care of my body. I had surgery last April on my shoulder. It didn't dislocate, but it kind of kept subluxing, delightful word. So I kind of had my first injury in, around last April, and then luckily got that sorted after a bit of a rehab journey, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And now I'm playing for Quins, like you mentioned. So bit of an up and down, but that's kind of the life of any athlete. But I'm really excited to kind of look ahead, kind of getting more involved in the PWR and maybe a bit of sevens as well in the future.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. And you actually teed up my question there brilliantly, which is, I'd be really interested to hear, because you mentioned kind of the journey, going from imposter syndrome, picking a rugby ball, to suddenly thrown in at the almost the Olympic Games 2024, moving on to then Harlequins and the PWR. I'd be really interested to hear how your relationship with injury has kind of molded over the years. And you mentioned there that almost in your own words, kind of you felt like quite lucky almost to only have your first injury almost quite late on. Like you were incredibly successful before. I'd be very interested to hear kind of how your perception of injury, what injury kind of meant to you, has changed maybe from beginning, maybe seeing other people get injured in your team to then suddenly, you're in it.
Good question. So I think there's a lot to that. So I'm thinking right back to the start when I kind of was a part of a elite professional environment. When you're the youngest there, you naturally observe and you naturally look around and you see that all these older, more experienced players are doing so much prep. They're stretching all the time. And when you're 18, you're like, what are they doing? They're wasting their time. I don't need to do that. And that works for a bit, but then you kind of naturally want to do what they're doing. So I was doing all the rehab stuff, all the prep, all the stretching, all the kind of stuff that was important in the gym. I was doing that from a relatively early part of my career. And I do think that set me in really good stead. In terms of what you're doing in the gym, in terms of, the bigger lifts like squats and deadlifts and hang cleans, for example, that's all great. But if you're not doing your robustness and like looking after your ligaments and tendons in the gym, you're not going to be able to do anything. So I knew from very early along in my journey that is the important stuff in the gym. So I learned that from a very early age, which was really brilliant, and I'm really grateful for that. And it's just meant that I have really good processes and I know it works for me before every game. Um, and throughout the journey, as I got further along, I kind of did keep thinking, it's going to happen at some point. Like, I can't be this lucky. You hear all these stories about rugby players getting injured. Like, it's going to happen. And I started after Paris, during Paris, I started feeling a bit of a niggle, and it was the first time I got my shoulder strapped. I had no strapping before. I wouldn't take any sort of supplements for my ligaments or tendons. I'd take no collagen. Never got anything strapped. And then I was like, you know what, this is kind of hurting, and I didn't really know what it was. I was like, can I just get that tape stuff on my shoulder? It might help. And that was the kind of beginning of kind of realizing, oh gosh, something's not quite right. I really need to be proactive here. So it's very much being proactive rather than reactive in the kind of elite athlete setting. So in that way, I guess my mindset has shifted in terms of, rather than dealing with it when it happens, how can we prevent something from happening further down the line?
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. I think there's a few things I want to touch on there. The first one is the balance between, the heavy lifts and the robustness. And that's a brilliant word to use. And I think as someone who's been in, I think for personally, I've kind of experienced more the elite end of sport at university, then also the more social side of sport at more clubs. It's amazing how important that robustness really is. And I think it's something I want to try and convey to younger athletes. I think it's brilliant coming from someone like yourself as well, that it's not all about necessarily the numbers in the gym. I think there is a bit of a trend, I think now more so, that which is really good to see, that people are prioritizing stretching, the well-being and that kind of thing. And I think for rugby, particularly as we're on the sport, I think it can sometimes slip. From my own personal experience, that I know I've been at times in my career, and I've been obsessed with the squat numbers, the deadlift numbers, thinking they translate straight across. But then actually, when you're around the topper end athletes, more than anything, they're prioritizing their well-being. So I think it's really interesting to hear from you with that. And I think building from that, injuries is definitely something that I'm sure we'll touch on to with your shoulder, that there's a big loss of control there. There's a big loss of control because all of a sudden the body you've worked towards suddenly kind of, almost betrays you, or it's not quite functioning the way you want to. So that process you talk about, is that something that kind of made you feel comfortable that, I've put as much effort as I can into protecting my own body, that if something does happen, there's kind of nothing more I could have done to prevent it?
Absolutely. It's more, one, it's physical preparation, but then it's also mental preparation. So both work hand in hand. And kind of alluding to what we're speaking about, everyone loves the physical preparation, but only a few do the mental side. And when you're kind of playing at the top level, both have to be firing equally. So in terms of the physical stuff, I kind of have, like a 10-15 minute routine before I was to play. I know what works for me. Resistance bands are great. Loads of kind of like isometric stuff, using partners to help is really good. But even if that does nothing, the placebo or how I feel doing it is huge. And I feel like I am putting my body in the best position I can. I know my body is as strong as it can be because I work hard in the gym. And if something happens, and rugby's rugby, and stuff goes wrong. I think if there's a devil on your shoulder being like, could you have done the extra rep? Why were you slacking there? Why didn't you do your gym session? That's when you get annoyed. But like you mentioned, if you're doing everything, the standards of an athlete, then sometimes life throws you curveballs, and we can't prevent that, but we can't dwell on the fact that it might happen. There are benefits of rugby, but there are also not many benefits of rugby, and that is one of them. But you've got to take the good and the bad equally.
Absolutely. And I think just before we come on to the curveball that obviously was thrown at you with your shoulder, I think it's something that definitely a trend that I've seen with kind of the elite athletes that I've spoken to, regardless of the sport, that emphasis on knowing that mentally that you have made the correct choice leading into that event means that no matter what happens, whether it's a time in a high rocks event or whether it's a, freak collision in a rugby game, athletes of the elite end, and this is definitely something that I think can be translated across the board, is that they feel most comfortable when they know they've made the correct choices leading up to the event, so that when something does happen, God forbid something does happen, you're in a better place mentally to be able to deal with it. As you said there, I think it was really interesting. You don't beat yourself up because you haven't done anything wrong in your own head. So no, I think that's really, really interesting. So just kind of wanted to move on to your curveball. It's a great word for it. To your shoulder. So I'd love to hear, like, take me to the moment it happened. So obviously you said it kind of more of a build up, but I think from what I've heard from you there was more, I say not more of a, so it wasn't necessarily an acute injury. It was almost like a build up of feelings. I think I can't quite remember the word.
Absolutely, subluxing. So
That's the one.
it
Yeah.
kind of, so in shoulders, you've got dislocating, which is pretty much the worst you can get. Not dislocating, and in the middle you've got subluxing. So that's when it keeps popping out like a dislocation, but then it comes back in.
Yeah.
And it's little moments that keeps popping out. So I kind of had that over the course of about a year period. So straight after Paris, all the way through to kind of, I guess, that next year, it kind of kept getting worse and worse. But it was never enough to stop me playing. So it was one of those annoying niggles. It was never enough for me not to get picked. It was never enough for me to step out. So I kind of just kept going. I kept going and I kept going, got a couple scans along the way, and they could see that my cartilage was a little bit torn in my shoulder. And I think it was after Dubai and Cape Town World Series, my physio was like, right, your cartilage is off your bone. So we can either get surgery now, and it's called a Latarjet surgery, which is basically where they put two little screws here.
Down there, yeah.
Two little screws here. So that's called a Latarjet. However, the surgery for a dislocation is a Latarjet, and the surgery that you would get with a subluxing is a Latarjet. So I'd have the same surgery either way. So my thought process was, why am I going to get surgery in January and not play anymore? The season's gone, when I could basically play until it goes, because it's the same surgery anyway. Yeah. So that was my mindset with it. And my physio was like, look, I back it. He don't think he was actually that kind of keen on the idea, because his past experience, he's seen a lot of, torn cartilage equals dislocation straight away. But in my head, I was like, well, for me, it makes no sense stopping now, when I just need to go until it goes, basically. So had Perth and had Singapore, had Hong Kong, had all of these places, Vancouver, and it kind of was still attached. And where we were in kind of the league table with sevens was, we were so close to being relegated. So everyone was putting, it was a intense time. Everyone was putting their 100% effort in. And we lost our other winger to her hamstring came off her pelvis. So she was gone. She was written off. So I was kind of the only winger. And I was like, well, bloody hell, I can't step back now because we're about to get relegated. So I did two more. And then once I knew we were safe, I was like, I am done. Like, the strapping I had to have on my shoulder, I think I tore like 10 layers of my skin off. You probably know strapping is just...
You can't move it beyond like there, can you?
And taking it off in the shower, for a 3-day tournament, it's like red raw. And I was like, I'm so over this. I'm not doing it anymore. And literally from that moment, flew back, had surgery. Annoyingly, the surgery went wrong. So I had to go back a week later and get it redone, because there's a wire between the two screws, and this wire was prodding into my into my nerves, which was making me like have a sick feeling. So I had to go back. They removed the wire. And after that second operation, I was kind of good to start my rehab. So like you mentioned, it wasn't like a on the spot dead dislocation. It was kind of a prolonged injury with a lot of thought. And I think I did it. I did kind of what I planned to do, keep going until I couldn't anymore. And that worked for me. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, it's so interesting to hear, because injury covers so many different facets, because it can easily be like yourself there, which is quite rightly understandably, you made the educated decision based on your current situation. And it's amazing how the damage can take multiple different pathways. Some people might have it done straight away, some don't, some leave it. But I think it's quite an interesting perspective. And I think I'd be really interested to hear, and kind of, you could like almost like take me to the moment where kind of A, you kind of made the decision, and then B, kind of how you felt kind of lying on that surgery table when you woke up. I think I'd be really interested to kind of hear kind of what feelings were kind of going through your head, kind of A, when you made the decision, and then B, maybe, the first few days following the surgery.
Yeah, good question. So when I made the decision, I was confident in my decision. I was also a bit nervous because I knew deep down I knew my physio wasn't 100% keen. So I was a bit like, I'm kind of going against what he's saying. He supported me 100%, but deep down I was like, ooh, like kind
Mm.
of going against what I think he would want me to do. But again, it's my decision. I can do what I want. Um, and three, I felt like a real team player in that moment. I was really proud of my decision because I felt like I was doing what was best for the team. And that is kind of what I want to always live by when I play sport. What is best for the team in that situation? It would not be good if we lost two wingers in a moment of could be quite drastic. So I felt really proud of my decision at that moment. You know, along the way, I did doubt it. I was like, why the hell am I doing this? When it kept popping out and I would cry after a match, I'd be like, why did I make this decision? I'm in pain. But nothing a bit of adrenaline can't fix. So I kind of kept going. And then, to be honest, when I knew I was done, I think Singapore was our last game when we knew we were safe. The last night in Singapore, I was so excited to have surgery. I was like, I am just buzzing to get home and sort this out because it's been troublesome for about a year now. And I am so ready to have a normal shoulder again. So I had a lot of excitement feelings. I was just buzzing to sort it out, to be honest. And then when I woke up, um, I was kind of a bit overwhelmed by the the pain. I didn't really think it would be as big of a surgery as it was. I kind of thought it'd be a little bit of keyhole, in they go, wiggle about, and it'll be
In and
done.
out, job
But
done. Yeah.
yeah, it was a big old slice open, um, and the recovery was a lot longer than I thought. And in terms of like what you mentioned about your body kind of not working anymore, you know, I couldn't even put my hair up. I couldn't do
Yeah.
anything. And you're like, wow, this is actually quite big. So the overwhelming feeling of, whoa, like I can't even move my arm up to here. There's a bit of a long road ahead.
Mm.
Um, so there was a mixture of feelings, excitement that I had it done, but also like, oh my gosh, what have I signed up for?
I think that's such a human response to that. I think that's really interesting that, and I think something that so many people can resonate with this idea that you're so happy that you've had it done because you know deep down that you know that this is what needs to happen. But on the
Yeah.
other side of the kind of the coin, you're thinking, hang on a minute, I've almost lost all my independence. Because as you mentioned there, I couldn't put my hair
Yeah.
up. As in, I know something for me that resonated massively was this idea that I couldn't eat. I
Yes.
obviously I'm on a sling and you couldn't eat, and it was little things like that. As much as I was proud, as you said there, like proud and happy that I've got the surgery done, the then knowledge that, well, hang on, I'm not the same at the moment. Like this is really
Yeah.
quite strange. So I'd be really interested to
Yeah.
hear kind of delve into that just for a brief moment. That were there any kind of like low points that happened in those first few weeks following the surgery? I'd be really interested to hear kind of almost why it felt low.
So I got quite annoyed at the pain that first night when I came back. So I had to have surgery in Manchester. So I had a nerve blocker in my shoulder. So that, for people that don't know, it's basically they numb your arm completely so you can't feel the pain when you wake up. And that nerve blocker wore off at like 3 a.m. And I literally went boom, eyes awake, screaming like for my mum, being like, I need morphine or whatever it was. And that pain went on for like all night and I didn't get any sleep that night. And I was like, wow, we are starting strong here. This is a strong start. So I think that moment was a bit of a realization, like, okay, this is going to be a little bit harder than you thought. So that initial pain was a bit of a shock. Wasn't really expecting that much pain. And then the kind of week after the immediate surgery, I got really bored with sitting still at home. And I think a lot of people are going to feel like this. It's really hard to rest, but it's what you need to do. It's the only way you're going to get better. I wanted to go on dog walks. I wanted to go like driving around, but if I went in the car, I felt sick. If I fell over walking my dog, that could,
Yeah.
do something that you can't do anything. And my mum was like, you don't rest normally. You have to rest now. Your body needs it. And the thought of sitting on the sofa all day makes me quite stressed. I can't do that, but it had to be done. Um, so understanding what's best for your body and going against your normal routine is 100% necessary. Um, and I'd say the last point, a little bit further down the line in terms of low points, there was a low point where with a shoulder surgery, you have to value mobility over strength. So when you're rehabbing, you want to get the full, you want to be able to reach it above your head before you start loading it. And I was like, whoa, look at this, my shoulder's flying up there. And I started my strength. And then I did what's called an Ash test. I'm not sure if you know, but you push down here, then you push down here, then you push down here. So you've got 3 points to do an isometric push, and you're lying on your front. And I pushed down as hard as I could, and it couldn't detect any force. And the physio was just like, it hasn't detected any force. And I was a bit like, okay. I was really going for it on that one. That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
So that was a bit like, yeah, you just got to work harder, basically. You're not working hard enough. So kind of 3 points where I was kind of a little bit tested. Other than that, it was a relatively smooth transition. I mean, we did lose our jobs halfway through, which wasn't ideal because we all got made redundant.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. We do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we all got made redundant after April. So I had my shoulder surgery, then I had the second one, and then lost a job. I was like, wow, life is thriving.
Yeah. And that's so interesting. Sorry, just to butt in there, but I think it's really interesting the point you just made. I think that the kind of two things I want to touch on. The first one is that routine, and I think it's something that so many people resonate with. This idea that, what do you mean I have to rest? Like,
Yeah.
that's what I want to do. And I think selfishly, having had a lower and a upper and lower body injury, the temptation with an upper body is incredible because in theory you can move around and whatnot. And I think it's so interesting to hear that firstly that idea of rest was very difficult, but ultimately what your body needed. And I'd be really interested to hear, like, was that lack of routine or the loss of routine something that really was one of the hardest things to deal with?
Yeah, I think so. I think when all your friends are at work, when your mum and dad are out the house and it's just you're kind of like, oh, I have to watch more TV. I have to do my mobility exercises. I can't really eat because I feel sick from the meds. And you're just kind of sitting there with not much company, and you're a bit lonely and you can't do much. You've got no independence. I couldn't get in the bath. I couldn't have a shower.
That is such a cool memory. Yeah.
Such a cool memory. I literally felt like 3 again. I was like, Mum, can you run me a bath? Can you wash me, please? Can you wash my hair? Should help me in the bath. Like, oh, any sort of like decency or privacy. But it also makes you really happy that you've got support because, like Tom, like my boyfriend, he had to like wash my armpit in the shower, and I was like, wow, this is really like an icebreaker. So it does make you kind of understand who's amazing in your life and who is there for you, which is a really nice thing. But it's just the lack of independence for me. Like as a girl, not being able to do your hair is so annoying. So annoying. And it's just, I found it's the little things that got me more than anything else. Like I couldn't cut a loaf of bread, so I'd have to like wait until my mum got home. And it was just little things like that you would not think would affect you. And I remember just kind of crying, trying to cut some bread. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm not even that upset, but the loaf of bread's making me cry. But it just makes you crazy stuff.
It's amazing how the little things, it's amazing how important they are. And there's something I'll come on to in a second about how important they are on the opposite way, because ultimately those little things, when you can cut the bread, it's amazing how those little things become more important. And just before I touch on that, you mentioned about the Ash test and the isometric test. And I think what's so interesting to me, what I heard was that it was almost like a gap between where you kind of expected yourself to be and where you were in your recovery. And it's something that I personally have struggled with. And I think it's something that I imagine lots of other people have struggled with as well, is this idea that you think you should be here. And you're trying everything. You're like, I've done all the recovery, I've done all the tests, I've done all the rehab exercises, and yet I'm still not quite there. So I'm really interested to kind of hear from you how that kind of felt, that gap between where you wanted to be and where you are now.
I think for me, I was comparing my journey to other people's journeys. So I was comparing my journey to another player's who completed her latter J surgery in 3 months. And when I got to 3 months, I still couldn't straighten my arm. And then I was like, hang on, but she's done all her return to contact within 3 months. She's already done. Why am I still here? And then I felt like I was rushing myself. so that comparison really is not helpful. Comparing your journey to someone else's is not helpful, because I had to have a second surgery. She didn't. That length in time. I lost a job halfway through, which added a load of mental load that I didn't have before. Everyone's journey is different, which I think is the most important thing. And no surgery is the same, no injury is the same. So scrap the comparison. Your journey is your journey alone, and the way that you think is best to deal with it is good. And you have to listen to your physios. If you go against what they say, it's only going to make things worse. So seeing you as a team with your physio and you're working together, having good communication with each other and not comparing, I think is the best way to mitigate that gap in knowledge between where you are and where you want to be.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think that's such a healthy response. I think it's something that we're really trying to push here. And I think that I wish more athletes could hear that you're on your own journey. It's your business. At the end of the day, as
Yeah.
you said, I think that's such a healthy thing you said there, that you had two surgeries. She didn't. You know,
Yeah.
unfortunately lost your job. Someone else might not have done. And those mental loads have different impacts. They have different home life. And I think it's in an age of social media, I think that's such a healthy
Yeah.
perspective. I think it should become to the last kind of like 10 minutes. I just had a notification sent 10 minutes, hence why I said. I'd be really interested to hear kind of two things. Firstly, when did things start to shift for you? You know, kind of like this. When did the things start to shift from being frustrating to positive? And then building from that, what are you most proud of from your injury journey?
When it started to shift, I would say, so during the summer, I basically rested. Um, I went on some amazing holidays and I didn't think about it. I had a nice break, which was really, really nice. And I think that's really good for your body again, even though you're on a schedule, resting is really, really important. And I think the mental rest I had was brilliant. So then when I came back to kind of pre-season at Quinn's, um, I was kind of good to go. I felt like I had loads of energy. I felt like I fueled myself well. I was rested and I was able to like hit my rehab hard. And I think that was a really nice moment where I was like, let's smash this now. Another few months and it's done. And I kind of managed to maintain that mentality until it was done. So that was brilliant. Um, in terms of what I'm most proud of, I think I'm just proud that I am back playing. Like it's quite a simple achievement, but to go from what you were, where you couldn't run a bath, you couldn't slice bread, you couldn't tie your hair up, to be able to tackle someone again, like that's so extreme. And when you're here, you're like, there's no way I would ever want to tackle anyone ever again. And that mindset shift, I think the growth is crazy. And I think I'm just proud of that growth and just getting to the end of it and getting through it, because it's quite a satisfying process when it's done. And it's quite gratifying knowing that that was you who did that and not anyone else.
Absolutely. I think that's such a like I kind of got goosebumps thinking about that as well, because I was thinking to my own like thing. I think that's such a healthy mindset to have, because it really is something. It changes your life. It fundamentally changes your life. No matter like, and something I try and think about myself is no matter like, yes, some injuries might be larger and some might be smaller, but no matter what, it affects your life. It's your identity that's changed. And I think ultimately being proud of just being able to return to the field is something I want rugby, particularly as a sport, not only because I want them so close to my heart, but also because of the nature of the sport. I really want the sport to celebrate the people who do make it back, because so many athletes, I know from my personal friends and people I've played with, just don't play anymore. They can't play.
Yeah.
So it just even
Yeah.
makes it feel as an unbelievable achievement. So firstly, well done. That's an unbelievable achievement. And then just before we touch at the end here, I'm really interested in what kind of small win meant the most. So if the playing was here and kind of, not being able to cut bread was here, was there anything along the way that on that journey when you went, you know what, this small win meant a lot?
Um, sounds so fun. I've got a video on my phone. I was in the gym and I was recording I was doing like a gym rehab video or something. And as I was resting, I put my hands on my hips and I literally went, whoa, I can put my hands on my hips. And I was literally in the camera, like showing off that I can put my hands on my hips.
What's she doing in the gym?
Literally, I was like, thank God no one was in there, because I was literally like, oh yeah.
Waltzing around.
Yeah. But being able to put your hands on your hips, I was like, whoa, like I've gotten so far already. And it sounds so silly, but like such an amazing feeling being able to doing that. And then, being able to do a dead hang, just being able to hang there with my arms above my head, being able to pull up. I did a hang clean for the first time last week. So it's just those, for me, I see those wins in the gym, and
Yeah,
doing little things that you couldn't do before is amazing.
that's amazing. Thank you. Yeah. And I think just the last question here, before we go, I'd be really interested to hear if you could go back and kind of picture yourself on that table or someone else on that surgery table, what would kind of one bit of advice be for them to help them from that process of not being a cut bread to returning to the field?
Oh gosh. Um, I think almost the mental preparation that it's not going to be easy, knowing that you're going to want to do stuff that you can't, and it's a short period of your life. In the grand scheme of things, it's not even 1% of your life, and you're just going to have to go along with it. I think I was trying to restrict it. I was trying to fight against what was best. Um, and you know what? See it as a positive. There's not many times in life where you get to sit on the sofa and watch loads of TV and eat whatever you want for a week. Like, what an awesome opportunity. Seeing it as an amazing thing, rather than a restriction, and just switching your mindset to, oh my gosh, you're going to have the most amazing 2 weeks relaxing. You're going to feel so rested after this. Um, Always making things positive rather than seeing what you can't do. See the other benefits it has for you. You get to spend more time with your family. You don't have to be out late training. You can chill. You can pick up another hobby. So many different other things you can do, and just, seeing the benefit in it rather than the disadvantage.
Almost like what you can do, not what you
Yeah,
can't. And and once you accept it, it almost becomes easier because you're almost in control of what's going on.
accepting it. It's not, don't restrict it, just go with the flow.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to pause it here on the basis that I'm concerned my Zoom link might suddenly just disappear. So, well, I'll pause the recording there. Thank you so much for your time, Grace, and we wish you all the best with returning to, continue to play at Harlequins and all the rest of your career. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.